critical hit. So that might be one idea for Mattia to kind of approach this matchup that I see.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because just being able to utilize this Ogerpon in a different way and forego, like you said, all of the debuffs accumulated over time is so crucial, especially when it comes to a setup core like Juan's, where you've got that consecutive disruption potential with the Rillabooms, with the Incinerals, and even the Iron Bundles with the speed control. So yeah, I think Juan's just going to have to lock in right now in what they're most used to when it comes to this matchup, because like we were talking about before, Marcus, we're expecting Juan to have had like loads of prep time against our Vega Core versus Mattia versus the Giratina.
And we're getting into it. So yeah, tell your friends, don't go anywhere. I think there's going to be a really exciting round 3 match here in Seville. And right away, we are seeing Wheezing and Incineroar. Not the lead that I thought we might see, but with neutralizing gas, no abilities on the field, and you could see just how quickly Juan locked in those moves. He knows what he wants to do in this matchup.
Yeah, he's absolutely figured this out. Most likely flowcharted it to the T, but we do have Fake Out available, at least on Juan's side for now. It's going to be able to suppress or at least flinch an opposing Pokemon because the neutralizing gas is on the field. There's no sort of play that Mattia could go for by bringing the Farigiraf in to forego it.
Yeah, exactly. No ability there. And we see the Focus Energy right away. So, yeah, I think a little bit of a passive turn. Fake Out, Focus Energy, and what does the Wheezing go for?
Oh, it's going to go for the Poison Gas and wants to make sure it could get that that detrimental poison status onto it and start accumulating the damage over time with each turn that goes. So it sort of puts a timer both on the Miraidon, but most importantly on this Ogerpon, which we saw has set up a focus energy and just being able to tap into that heightened Ivy Cudgel critical ratio to guarantee critical hits from here on out.
Yeah, Wheezing is one of those Pokemon that players have identified is particularly strong against this Miraidon team, just because on the Miraidon team, typically there are no Pokemon that can avoid being poisoned.
Right.
They're all grounded, no poison type, no Terra Poison, nothing. Yep. So typically, Wheezing would also try to use Toxic Spikes. However, in this variant, we don't see that move. It's going to be Poison Gas to try and get those poisons down. But yeah, over time, that's going to stack up as well.
Yeah, exactly. We've got the first Thrustalization here. Mattia's Ogerpon is not going to benefit off of an attack boost necessarily because the neutralizing gas is still in effect, but it's still going to get the boost from the Fire Terra itself. Volt Switch will be targeting down that Incineroar, getting the pivot action going, making sure that the really good damage can be dealt initially whilst preserving the Miraidon for mid to end game situation.
Yeah, Whimsicott coming in there, potentially looking for some targets to go for Encore, and there is that big Ivy Cudgel. Let's see, double up into the Incineroar. How much is it going to do?
It survives on 1 hit point, my lordy! That was so much damage. Dazzling Gleam will go ahead and deal chip damage in combination with the Flare Blitz into the Ogerpon. All of a sudden, that survival right there. Sure, the Incineroar's going to go down, but it was able to deal some really good damage there to add to the poison damage at the end of each turn.
Yeah, and as we were saying, Ogerpon might be a key Pokemon for Mattia, who also identified that, went for the Focus Energy, went for the Terrestrialization, so any HP of damage that you can do to it will be important. The Whimsicott now just switched in. Wheezing didn't go for Protect the previous turn. Maybe that is, I think, what Mattia was expecting. That's why they doubled into the Incineroar. But now it means that Wheezing could just go for a Protect this turn. Yeah, however, looking up against that Whimsicott, it's tough because typically Juan would want to go for a Calm Mind now. He would want to maybe go for a Protect with the Wheezing, like take the game really slow. But Encore is definitely a threat that Juan has to consider, and without any boosts, that Giratina is going to be really weak.
Yeah, exactly. As the light screen is actually going to be set up right now, wanting to make sure that any sort of Calm Mind boosts that get built up will have an additional turn where they won't be able to deal as much damage. But talking about damage, well, the Giratina was able to take that quite nicely. Yep. Sort of talking about its raw stats there in the defensive aspect. Calm Mind has been set up right here, so +1 special attack as well as special defense. Does this Wheezing go for a taunt to be able... Oh, it does!
That's huge!
It's so good. You're able to forego the Encore interaction in the subsequent turn. You see Juan has absolutely locked in here.
Yeah, big plays coming out here by Juan. 2 turns in a row, not protecting the Wheezing. He's saying like, okay, I think you're gonna target the other slot because you're expecting the Protect. Right. And now this has paid off massively because he was able to get up the boost on the Giratina and taunted Whimsicott. Well, what's it gonna do? Go for a Moonblast? Like, that's not really gonna do that much damage. I mean, sure, like, it's gonna hit the Giratina for super effective, but yeah, we just see Giratina can shrug off any damage, really. So yeah, nicely played by Juan. And now the question is, does Juan wants to, yeah, probably stick around with the Weezing because you still wanna shut down the abilities of your opponent, but yeah, Giratina will be able to start racking up damage slowly.
Yeah, as the Whimsicott's actually going to switch out, I think to be able to have that Encore in effect later on in the game. We'll be bringing the Farigiraf in, however. There is still neutralizing gas in the field, so any sort of priority stuff will come into play. But we see the focus on the Giratina.
Wow.
It wants to make sure it tries to whittle it down. It is clearly the biggest threat on the other side of the field. We see the Shadow Ball, no commit with the second Carmine, of course, because of the amount of damage accumulated onto this Ogerpon, does pick up the KO. And I do want to sort of ask you, Marcus, we saw in the previous turn there was no focus onto the Weezing from the Ogerpon. That really feels like it may have been a bit of a, not misplay, because clearly the priority is on the Giratina, but you need to kind of get rid of this disruption from the Weezing. Yeah,
Mattia needs to prove now that it was worth investing all these attacks into the Giratina to get it to around 50%. Because yeah, if you let the Giratina sit there for a while, it's gonna heal up more and more with the leftovers, potentially with grassy terrain if the Rillaboom is waiting there in the back. And yeah, I kind of agree with you. Maybe it might have been worth it to try and go after that Weezing. But now Miraidon comes on the field, still no abilities, no electric terrain, it's still poisoned. So it looks like this is just an easy protect here with the Giratina. Heal up a little bit more, rack up a little bit more of a poison damage on both of your opponent's Pokemon, as Juan now nicely also went for the poison gas here to get that status condition on Farigiraf. And yeah, Juan in a pretty good spot, but game's not over yet.
Yeah, and it sort of leans you into a false sense of security on maybe with the Weezing side, because if you're from Mattia, because Juan could easily go for the protect, but the Whimsicott has been brought in. That's a very nice play. The question is there going to be a read? Is the taunt going to be focusing down on that Whimsicott slot? No, it's a double protect, and this is sort of what we're talking about, false sense of security. Mattia was able to absolutely capitalize off of it by still having a sort of like a win-win situation. You either get the Volt Switch off, deal some really good damage onto the Weezing, or you can still have the Whimsicott in the event of an Encore Protect scenario.
Yeah, and this is a big play here by Mattia. Now he has the threat of Encore, can lock the Giratina into Protect, but the problem that I see is still the fact that there is this poison on both the Miraidon and the Farigiraf. So technically speaking, Juan doesn't even need to attack anymore. He just needs to, yeah, sit there and wait until these Pokemon get knocked out. Now we saw Miraidon locked itself into an electric type move, but looks like Juan has other plans. Bringing in his fourth and final Pokemon, it's going to be that Rillaboom.
Yeah, and of course the Grassy Surge is not in effect because of the neutralizing gas as of the current moment. Volt Switch deals so much damage, but because of the Citrus Berry, Weezing is going to be able to recover a bit more HP, maybe even push it out of another Volt Switch range. Whimsicott, however, we're going to have to see what it goes for as the pivot is now in effect. The Farigiraf is going to be brought back in.
Yeah, Farigiraf, really sad spot for it to be in against that Weezing. It can't really do that much. Encore fails, and it's probably gonna be a Dazzling Gleam. Nope, just another Poison Gas. Farigiraf already poisoned, and now finally also Whimsicott as the last Pokemon over on Mattia's side. Yeah, struck with that condition.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that was sort of the situation where Juan had to make a decision. Which Pokemon do you switch out to be able to catch out the Encore? And Mattia just really needed to get that right. If he focused into the Weezing, it at least would have been locked in that scenario and essentially be a sort of like a null slot until you're able to maybe get that Giratina back in. But yeah, this is really proving to be quite a heavy board state matchup, sort of what we were talking about and speculating about before, but you've got Fake Out now online with that Rillaboom.
Yeah, and something we didn't talk about before in Team Preview, but something that is quite relevant here is the fact that Rillaboom does not have U-turn. It opted to go for the high horsepower instead. If you had U-turn, then I think you could make plays where you like switch out the Weezing, set up the grassy terrain, you like U-turn and so on. But looks like that Rillaboom has a little bit of a different role, and you probably also don't want your opponent to benefit from the grassy terrain, so it works out quite nicely. Fake Out on a Borreguero. Love to see it. And another taunt coming out from that Weezing. Won't do that much on the Miraidon, but another turn of Poison Tick, and that is a win for Juan, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. It's just at this point you've been able to get so much value from those poison gases of the Weezing over time. The fact that the Weezing was enabled so much and not sort of disrupted is really proving to be a thorn in Mattia's side. And even though the Miraidon is on the field, it did get the read right with, you know, just bringing the Miraidon in. It's the fact that it's on a timer.
Yeah.
And you just need to be able to try to get the KOs as quick as possible and maybe bring the Miraidon in position where you could have the Draco meter available for the Giratina.
And as long as you still have 3 Pokemon, you can still pivot in and out between the Borreguero, Whimsicott, and the Miraidon. But as soon as one Pokemon goes down on Mattia's side, I think that would be curtains. However, Helping Hand Draco Meteor is enough to get the knockout on the Rillaboom, even without the boost from terrain. That is a very important calc to know, or to know what the likelihood is. But Dazzling Gleam, some more chip damage with a critical hit on the Borreguero. And yeah, with that poison, that Weezing really the star of this first game.
Truly, and it's not something that we commonly actually say, in all honesty. The fact that Mattia now has the option of switching the Miraidon back out to be able to bring the Whimsicott, reset the special attack drops, and maybe try to better position yourself to pick up a KO is so crucial. But like you said, Marcus, the fact that Mattia's Pokemon are so low on HP, it sort of kind of feels like there is a bit of a chance for Mattia if he's able to dispatch of them very quickly.
Yeah, I think you need to make a read here as Mattia. Is the Giratina going for a Protect? If yes, then you have to get out with your Miraidon ASAP.
Yes.
If the Giratina is not protecting, then maybe going for another Helping Hand Draco Meteor into that slot, maybe that's enough to get the KO.
Oh yeah, catch him out.
Or, yeah, you want to try and reset the Miraidon for later on, but with a board of Whimsicott and Borreguero, one of my friends calls it like the forbidden position, because they just don't have any offensive pressure whatsoever, so you really don't want to be stuck in a spot like this with 2 Pokemon that don't deal that much damage. But it looks like Mattia made the right call, because with the Terra to Fairy, both of Juan's Pokemon right now are immune to the Draco Meteor.
Yeah, exactly. And Juan did still have the Terra option available, of course, just trying to find the right moment to be able to utilize it. Shadow Ball will be focusing in what was the Miraidon slot and is now the Whimsicott, accompanied by Dazzling Gleam, enough to pick up the KO. Does outspeed that Borreguero as well, to note there, and now brings a scenario. We've got the Whimsicott next to the Miraidon. Normally you think, okay, that's a good position, they're faster, but the fact that they've got such low HP, Juan could just maybe even go for Protects here and afford to get Encore the following turn, because the Pokemon HP will just tick down on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. With that Dazzling Gleam, really nicely now, finally Juan got that KO. Now that Mattia is down to their last 2 Pokemon, no switch is possible. And Juan, yeah, as you were pointing out there, quite funny win condition there. Letting yourself be locked into Protect, but yeah, that would probably be enough at this point. And yeah, wow, really, really interesting pace of game that we don't really get to see. But in this matchup where the Weezing was there from turn 1, but let's see, maybe a critical hit. I don't know. Electro Drift, okay, that's enough.
Picks it up.
Knock out the Weezing. But yeah, I'm afraid Moonblast from that Whimsicott might not be strong enough to take down this Terra Fairy Giratina.
I mean, the fact that Giratina is such a bulky Pokemon, it's got leftovers as well, it really proves why it's actually a really cool niche pick. And we see the interaction of the Electric Terrain now on the field, a bit too late, I would say, with the Weezing now getting KO. Shadow Ball, enough to pick up the Whimsicott, and even if the Poison isn't enough, which I'm expecting it to be, the Protect just wraps it up, and Juan's got game 1.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very slow, and it comes down to the Giratina versus Miraidon, just like we were talking about in the pre-game analysis. But yeah, Miraidon goes down to the Poison, and Juan takes this first game. I must say, though, it wasn't like super convincing in a way where it's like, oh, like there's one thing that Juan does and there's no answer whatsoever to it. Instead, it felt more like, okay, Juan has the experience in the matchup. That's something that we were talking about before the game. Juan knows this matchup, whereas Mattia does not.
Well, it's true.
So yeah, you got to figure out, okay, what am I allowed to do and what am I not allowed to do? And it seems like what Mattia is not allowed to do here is let that Weezing just stay on the field for too long, let it spread the poisonous gas, and let it chip down his Pokemon with Dazzling Gleam. So I'm expecting in the second game, Mattia will try to hit that Weezing a lot more offensively, a lot more aggressively compared to this first game where he was predicting the Protect a lot of times, I felt like. Trying to double up into the Incineroar, didn't quite get it. Then doubling up or attacking the Giratina, didn't quite manage to do enough damage so that he could knock out the Giratina before it became a problem. And yeah, I think this was a story of where do you put your damage, and it seemed like Juan just knew a little bit better of where he needed to put that little bit of chip damage every turn. Whereas, yeah, the damage that Mattia did, a lot of it was healed back. And eventually Juan, yeah, could take the game very narrowly, but he could take it, yeah, as we said, like in this endgame, he kind of had it locked up there.
Yeah, exactly. And having the familiarization of having to adapt to the scenario based off of, you know, certain key pieces to open up the floor for your win strategy clearly is something that Juan's striving for and has done well in game 1. But let's see what game 2 is going to spell out. It is going to be a change-up. On both sides. It's going to be the Iron Bundle now making a debut in this set, and on the alongside the Weezing, of course, versus Mattia's Farigiraf and the Miraidon. So going on the immediate offensive, I feel.
Yeah, now the question is, of course, do you want to go for a Protect with the Weezing? There would be also a Psychic from Farigiraf, which does a lot of damage. But once again, no Protect. It's going to be a Freeze Dry, doing a lot of damage to this Miraidon. And the Volt Switch going into the Weezing this time, so it looks like Mattia learned from game 1, now targeting down this Weezing pretty aggressively as we were predicting.
Yeah, extremely, and I think that's sort of the requirement, because you need to be able to up the tempo to the point where you're like, okay, cool, I know based off of the game 1 what the key sort of win cons are in my favor. Juan could have absolutely taken advantage of that and gone for a Protect there to catch out Mattia, but it's a bit risky when you've got that Whimsicott capable of locking you in with the Encore. But yeah, the Iron Bundle was absolutely allowed to go ahead and deal basically a 2-shot onto the Miraidon. And the turn's not even over, folks. We've got the Poison Gas now in effect, connects with both. Of course, I do want to mention it is a 90% accurate move. Let's not forget it's not guaranteed just because it's a poison type, unlike the Toxic. But we have got Psychic now focusing on the Weezing. Is enough? It is! It picks it off, and finally what was a huge thorn in Mattia's side in game 1 is already gone in turn 1 of game 2.
Yeah, big double up by Mattia. A lot of foresight here. This is once again one of those, okay, I know that my opponent knows that I know, and so on. So Juan was hovering over the Protect. He was like, okay, surely he's not going to let me do the same thing again, but unless...
unless it's a bit too obvious.
Unless it's a little bit too obvious. Decided to risk the Weezing once again here on turn 1, but this time Mattia was like, okay, there were too many times where it didn't attack the Weezing and it didn't Protect, so now I'm going to go for it. And yeah, now I think this is going to be like really exciting, because, okay, what does Juan do now? Is his plan really to kind of like read around where the opponent is going to tackle into the Weezing or not? Or can this Giratina run away with the game even without the support from the Weezing?
Yeah, exactly. As we see the focus of the Ogerpon trying to target down the Iron Bundle and break its focus sashes at least. Calm Mind, on the other hand, is going to be set up by the Giratina, +1 in special attack and special defense. It will be susceptible to an Encore, I would say, but no switch outs from Mattia, so it's free to go ahead and either deal damage or at least get another Calm Mind set up.
Yeah, it's another one of those positions where it seems like Juan has a safe move with a Protected Calm Mind, but let's not forget that in the previous game, Mattia was the one switching in Whimsicott on a turn like this before, and then with the threat of Encore, he could have forced out the Giratina again. But this time, this turn goes in Juan's favor. He's calling the fact that there is no Whimsicott switch in, predicting the opponent to wanting to try and get rid of this Iron Bundle as quickly as possible as well, and locking down the game, essentially. But that means now, okay, Juan got a free Calm Mind. Now, of course, Iron Bundle went for the Protect the previous turn, so if Mattia wanted, they could try and go for the same double up this turn, and there is not that much that Juan can do. Unless, of course, maybe there is like, yeah, like a switch out coming out from that Iron Bundle.
Yeah, but yeah, I think so. And having the Iron Bundle here is so nice because you're able to thread in a guaranteed super effective move if the Whimsicott is the 4th poke Pokemon in the back and there's any sort of switch-ups from Mattia's side, but there is not. And this is really interesting. The Terra Fire, maybe in anticipation of the Freeze Dry hitting neutrally here. Juan could have had an opportunity to read this, go for a Hydro Pump and risk it, but that is not the case. Has gone for the Freeze Dry. There is a small chance of a freeze, which has not been established in this turn. We have got the Ivy Cudgel +1. Of course, it's enough to bring this little Iron Bundle down to its Focus Sash.
And that would be the perfect chance for the Farigiraf to claim this knockout. But before that,
+1 special attack though.
Shadow Ball critical hit. That really reminds me of the back in the day, 2010. But with that, Ogerpon knocked out, and now Psychic gets to finish off this Iron Bundle, and we will go into an endgame. Juan down to their last 2 Pokemon. Mattia still has 3, but of course we have the poison.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, 2 versus 2 affair. There is no Wheezing left on the field, which means both, as we saw, the Rillaboom's going to be able to be brought in, have grassy terrain at least for now. I say 2 versus 2. It's actually 2 versus 3, apologies, which means Mattia has the option to either bring the Miraidon in right now, maybe get a pivot action going, and then take it in the back, make sure that you've got the electric terrain available to forego Rilla's access to it.
And I'm just like a little bit nostalgic seeing
I can see your
Spanish text about a critical hit with a Giratina on the field. Like this
critical.
Yeah, this brings me way back. But yeah, anyway, we're in 2025 here. Miraidon finally gets to activate the electric terrain, but then Rillaboom overrides it right away. And that Giratina has so much healing potential right now. But now Miraidon would be safe of a fake out, so could just go for the Volt Switch, pivot out, and come back in later. And I think that's exactly what Mattia kind of needs to do here in this matchup. And a big question for the Giratina on Juan's side: do you want to terrestrialize it now?
Yeah.
Do you want to try and maybe keep the terrestrialization for later to see what the Miraidon will lock into? Because yeah, of course, Miraidon can switch out and then lock into a different move, but once you've terrestrialized, you cannot go back.
Yeah, exactly. I think you need to be gutsy from Juan's side and maybe even disrespect the Draco Media in anticipation of the safer play of the Volt Switch, as we do not even see that. We just see a hard switch of Miraidon here. Clearly, Mattia trying to catch out Juan here and might well be able to do so, as we've got at least the Fairy Terrestrialization coming out. This does mean the Miraidon in a later turn will be able to have both Electro Terrain on the field and be able to hit it for neutral with its Electro Drift, which is a phenomenal damage.
Yeah, so you got to make sure that this Giratina does not get a lot of Calm Mind boosts. But yeah, nice switch. This is something that I was thinking about before. With the Farigiraf and the Whimsicott, you actually have 2 Pokemon that are completely immune to either of Giratina's attacks. And you can really, if you can manage to cycle between the Farigiraf and the Whimsicott, bring them in at the right time, you can really soak up that damage so nicely.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mattia has the Pokemon count advantage. Now can potentially also Encore lock the Giratina in a move that it might not want to use. Yeah, maybe there could be a good way for Mattia to take the second game.
Yeah, but I mean, once again, this is a Giratina we're talking about. We know how bulky this Pokemon is, even though obviously there are so many different multipliers coming out from the Electro Drift when Miraidon does come back onto the field. But at least for now, I think Mattia's Whimsicott and Farigiraf's roles are to deal as much damage as possible to be able to lock out the game for the Miraidon.
Yeah, and how do you even deal with this Whimsicott at this point? I think it's gonna just like sit there on the field for a long time, setting up light screens, disrupting with Encore, and even predicting this and going for a Moonblast. Wow.
Well played.
Yeah, that might be then a double up with a foul play as well going into this Rillaboom slot.
Yeah,
nicely done.
Well played too. Not enough to pick up the KO, but like we said, the important thing here is to be able to deal enough damage for the Miraidon to come in and absolutely sweep up this game and give Mattia that final opportunity to be able to run it back to a Game 3 to win the set. As sure, the poison is really, the damage is building up. The Farigiraf is going to go down the next turn, surely, as we've got the Encore into the Protect of the Giratina. Not a good spot.
Yeah, definitely not. Protect will fail. Also could have gone maybe for a Helping Hand in Moonblast to knock out this Rillaboom. So there were plenty of options that probably all lead to a victory here for Mattia, as Farigiraf gets knocked out, but now yeah, the Miraidon has the last loft in this terrain battle, we'll be able to switch in, and we will have electric terrain at least for the next 5 turns, and maybe until the end of the battle, because Juan has no way of overriding that terrain at this point.
Yeah, because I was trying to think, does the Rillaboom take another Moonblast? Is it able to survive it? Because if it is, and there's an Electro Drift into the Giratina, I mean, there shouldn't be, right? Because, because of the Protect, because of the previous turn. So it should just be a very safe double up into the Rillaboom. You guarantee you pick up the KO, and that's exactly what we're going to see. Mattia identifying that, not making sure, or should I say, making sure he doesn't fall short of any sort of misplays there.
Yeah, very, very clinically, Mattia here plays down this end game. He knew he had the advantage with the Whimsicott. Not really a lot of damage potential from Juan's side, but Mattia switched it into the high horsepower and Dragon Pulse. Perfect switch and perfect play there at that point. And then, yeah, it's just a little bit too much for Juan to deal with. So now both players get a little bit of extra time. I don't expect this to just get the one-shot, right?
No! Wow! That is
Giratina is so bulky, but yeah, it's just a matter of time when Mattia will then win the second game, and both players have a little bit of time now to think about this game 3.
Yeah, exactly, and you want to be able to take advantage of as much time as you can, essentially, because you got 45 seconds each turn, you've got 90 seconds in team preview. You want to make sure that you build up as much of an advantage and an understanding of what needs to be done in the following match. So, yeah, we're going to see them go ahead and, exchange blows right now. This is going to be game 2, but I guess going into game 3, Marcus.
Yeah.
You're Juan. You've gone ahead, you've won game 1, quite commandingly, I would say, with the Galarian Wheezing. Game 2, you lost it turn 1. What would your mindset be in trying to preserve or bring the Wheezing, whether in the lead or at some point maybe in the back?
Yeah, it's a good question that you asked there. Maybe, Juan did lose that game on the very first turn. We saw the double up into the Wheezing, and that really proved to be a big problem because, he was lacking damage potential. He didn't have the same option to just stall out the game like we saw in the first game because, without the poison on the Whimsicott, on the Farigiraf, these Pokemon are actually super difficult to knock out here for Juan. So, I wonder if he wants to go with the same kind of Pokemon pick again. One Pokemon, though, that I think we will see in this third game by Juan is that Incineroar, because Incineroar would have the ability to go for Flare Blitz into the Whimsicott. It has knockoff against the Miraidon, and that just worked out quite nicely in the first game. So, I think that maybe Juan might want to go back to what worked for him in the first game. But then, of course, the question is, what will Mattia do? Will he expect the switch up again to the game 1 mode? Yeah. Will he try to counter that? Was the Farigiraf and Miraidon lead maybe a way to counter that lead of Juan?
Yeah.
And now that Mattia has won a game with that, does he go back to this? So, that's what both of these players are probably thinking about, and it looks like both of them are going for the exact same leads that they won their respective games with.
It was a very good call out from yourself there. Absolutely analyzed it to the T. That is exactly what our trainers have done. A whole different game 3 approach from both of our trainers. And you've got the Incineroar on the field. Like we said, there is a neutralizing gas, so Fake Out is online at the current moment. And it's just going to really have to come down to what sort of value do you have in going for the defensive versus a setup offensive of the Wheezing in anticipation of Mattia's switch out.
Yeah, now we really get to see that Mattia learned something from these first 2 games. Maybe he was kind of blind going into this matchup, but now he knows, there's probably going to be like a Fake Out and a Poison Gas. I don't want my Miraidon to be poisoned. Switches in the Ogerpon, and that means Farigiraf can get one big attack off, and if it is that Psychic, that would do a ton of damage to the Wheezing.
Yeah, truly, and I think it might just be, we're going to have to see, there it is, Psychico is coming out. It's going to be dealing so much damage. My lord, that's a bit of a special offensive invest there, surely. Oh, unless Wheezing's just that weak when it comes to special defense. But, I think in this situation, this is already really good for Mattia. He called which slot was going to get faked out into, and he's able to capitalize off of it. Sure, there is the Poison Gas that is online, so that's some small win for Juan. But the fact that the Wheezing's already lost so much HP is really bad, I would say.
Yeah, I would say definitely not a turn where either player after this is like, oh, this game is over.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
we're just approaching the mid game in a way. But a good opening for Mattia for sure, getting a lot of damage down on the Wheezing. And now Juan has to be worried about it because, yeah, Wheezing, what is he going to do here? He could try to go for a taunt or a Dazzling Gleam. And now Mattia uses that opportunity to bring in the Miraidon, potentially expecting a Protect to come out from the Wheezing. I think that was a good play because no matter what Juan does, you have a very strong opening for the next turn with this Miraidon now on the field.
Yeah, exactly. And at least you're able to most likely go either for a parting shot as an option onto the Miraidon slot, or at least the offensive slot, because it was previously the Ogerpon, or even go for any sort of knockoff into the Farigiraf if you want to try to make sure that you get rid of that, I would say, essential threat to the Galarian Wheezing. But no, it's going to be the Flare Blitz. It just wanted to hit neutrally onto the Ogerpon, deal as much damage as it can. There is no burn that's been picked up for additional damage, and there it is. The Psychic is trying to target down what was the Wheezing, and Giratina absolutely tanking that. Think about 51 hit points worth of damage onto a total 256. This Giratina is bulky.
Yeah, Giratina has hit the field. Not that much damage exchanged this turn, but as we were saying, Mattia was just setting up for this next turn, and now Miraidon has a big choice to make. Do you go for the Draco Meteor to potentially knock out an Incineroar? But there could be a Wheezing switching in. Do you want to go for the Draco Meteor on the Giratina? But there could be a Wheezing switching in, or it goes for the Terrestrialization to Fairy, exactly. Or do you try and go for a Volt switch into the Incineroar, but there could be a Rillaboom switching in. So this is a big opportunity for Mattia to potentially snatch a KO here. But you need to make the right move. And likewise for Juan, it's a little bit scary, but if you can maneuver around this positioning, then it could be huge for him. Because, yeah, if Miraidon locks into Draco Meteor, does not get a KO, that would be really bad for Mattia.
Yeah, and we actually see the adaptation here. No Iron Bundle. We've got the Rillaboom that's been revealed for Juan, and is able to override the electric terrain, has got the Grassy, is an Assault Vest variant, so unless there's a helping hand here, it's going to be able to survive a Draco Meteor focus. There is no helping hand. It goes into the Incineroar. It does survive on 1 hit point again. This Incineroar is absolutely trained to the T. It goes for the Flare Blitz, and in a very similar fashion to the game 1, we see it self-KO itself as it dealt some really respectable damage onto the Miraidon.
Toot. Yep, is this Juan? Yep, this is Marcus. Could you please give me that Incineroar? How do you train your Incineroar? I need to know.
Teach us.
that was awesome. And once again, the Incineroar getting off another Flare Blitz, just doing a little bit of extra chip damage before it gets knocked out from the recoil, just like we saw in the game 1. And yeah, it might prove to be important, similarly to how that game 1 played out. So a lot of, similarities that we're seeing here.
Yeah, exactly. As we do now have the Giratina on the field. So Incineroar is down now for Game 3. This set, it's gone. We've got the Giratina, though, next to a Rillaboom in grassy terrain. Sure, there isn't U-turn, as we've mentioned on the Rillaboom, but the sustainability of the Giratina and potential setup is key here. However, we've got Whimsicott potential being the 4th Pokemon in the back for Mattia, trying to get those on-call locks in. So Juan's going to really have to determine whether he goes for the setup or just goes for the damage with the Giratina.
Yeah, it's a tough position to be in, and I think Mattia makes the right choice there, switching out that Miraidon, because, yeah, you need it for later on for sure, and it is Whimsicott. I mean, we were expecting it at this point, and I think also Juan goes for the Shadow Ball. You need to get rid of that Whimsicott somehow, and once again, it's that high horsepower, which just doesn't do that much damage, and Foul Play also doesn't do that much damage, and now Mattia is in a position where there's pretty much, no damage output, but there is still also the Ogerpon and the Miraidon, so the 2 big hitters on Mattia's team are waiting in the back, and now with Farigiraf and Giratina, you can kind of prepare the field for them. Potentially set up Light Screen, go for some Encore shenanigans, and then bring in the big hitters at the right time without risking them to be knocked out on the switch-in.
What I do love about this is Weezing's in the back. So if it switches in and the Whimsicott, for example, speed tier-wise doesn't switch out, that means Grass Terrain will stay on the field. And the Miraidon will actually, if it does switch in, will not be able to get its Electrotain off. So it's going to be a very interesting scenario where Juan's just going to have to determine what the correct play is.
Yeah, the speed tiers, though, in this interaction, definitely very important. And I would expect the Whimsicott to be faster than both Pokemon over on Juan's side. So yeah, Whimsicott would probably switch out first. But no switches. It's gonna be a Moonblast doing good, super effective damage on that Giratina before it strikes back with a Shadow Ball. And if this is double up with Woodhammer, that should be enough to get the knockout here on the Whimsicott.
See, it's enough! Oh, wow, that is such an important KO there. Whimsicott is finally down and out. This, like you said, Marcus, is going to allow the Giratina to now feel a bit more freed up in terms of getting the Calm Minds going after it takes a bit more damage, actually important damage there from the Psychic. It does sort of put it within the range where the Miraidon can very well pick up a potential KO if it's allowed to have the electric terrain.
Magnificent plays there by Juan, identifying that Whimsicott is one of the key threats on his opponent's team. Doubling up with moves that aren't super effective, but you just punch the Whimsicott until it goes down with a Shadow Ball, high horsepower, Woodhammer, whatever it takes. But now after 2 double ups, finally got rid of that Whimsicott, and now this opens up a possibility for Giratina to go for those Calm Minds. In the face of 2 Pokemon that can't really hit it for that much damage, as Ogerpon comes in for Mattia. And we said it before, but yeah, Ogerpon is not the greatest attacker into Giratina. But do you wanna invest your Terrestrialization now on Rillaboom, or do you want to keep it around for Giratina later on against that Draco Meteor? That's a tough decision to make for Juan.
Yeah, it truly is, and it also leaves you susceptible to the Electro Drifts, very powerful in the electric terrain as well, foregoing your grass typing. As we see, Juan has locked in with that, going for the Fire Terror, wants to make sure it does not take as much damage as it regularly would from this Ogerpon, which does try to target it down. It goes for the Ivy Cudgel, and because of the Terror, it does survive, even through un gol critical.
Wow, and Dragon Pulse coming through now on this Ogerpon, and another high horsepower, another critical hit!
Critical!
Knocking out the Ogerpon, now both down to their last 2 Pokemon, and this Terrestrialization has paid off massively. Psychic 2 HP!
What?
One pops out! What is happening in this game?
2 hit points left! Juan, teach us, please! How do you train your Pokemon like this? It's amazing, and now we're in a scenario where we've just got 3 versus 2. Juan, already in such a better position.
Yeah, and now he has the option to protect the Giratina, swap out the Rillaboom into the Weezing, swap the Weezing back out into the Rillaboom, and he will have the control over terrain until the end of this game. And the question is, though, is there something that Mattia can do to kind of play around that? I think, well, you kind of gotta go for the Draco Meteor at this point, because you know the Giratina will not be able to Terrestrialize. So what you could do is you can Draco Meteor the Giratina, use Psychic in the Rillaboom, predicting the switch out into the Weezing, and then you would have another chance to go for Draco Meteor into Giratina. Right. However, of course, Juan knows this. Does not switch out. Goes for the Protect and Attack. Where does Miraidon target? Because yeah, you cannot afford to Draco Meteor a Rillaboom, so chooses to go for the Dazzling Gleam. Definitely will keep him in the game, I think.
It will, but then are you going to be able to deal enough damage onto the Weezing? I think you're going to have to try to prioritize the Psychic with the Ferrograph to pick up that KO and finally get rid of it, because in this scenario, you know, like, I mean, to be fair, Weezing has taken a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And this is electric terrain that remains on the field to boost the Hadron engine, right?
Yeah, but we will have neutralizing gas now join the field. So even though we have the terrain, actually doesn't help that much. So you could use Helping Hand Dazzling Gleam, which would do a ton of damage to the Giratina, but yeah, is it enough to knock out the Weezing? This is really coming down to the wire here for both players. Yeah, I think Weezing will be able to take it. So what you could do is you can just, I mean, you could go for a Poison Gas. You could also go for a Dazzling Gleam. You could try to go for a Double Protect. Juan will have to play this like in a very like slow way. But I think Helping Hand Dazzling Gleam, and you just gotta hope that it's enough to knock out the Giratina from this range.
Yeah, I think that truly has to be the play right now. And the Giratina wants to essentially get rid of the Ferrograph, because once it's able to do that, it opens up the Weezing to be able to just lock out the game. It's gonna be tough. It's approaching the end game. We are definitely in the end game. Dazzling Gleam comes out. No other protect attempts have been made. It deals so much damage onto the Giratina. Are we going to see a speed interaction right now between the Giratina goes for the Shadow Ball? It targets down the Miraidon. It is not enough, even though there's another Golpetri to go. My lord, there's too many of them. Dazzling Gleam will get rid of the Miraidon. The on its own. I don't think this is enough for it, though.
Borreguero has one more chance to go for a Psychic. Where's it going to land? It is into that Wheezing, which will get the knockout, but Giratina, I don't think you get rid of the Giratina, so Helping Hand might have been the call there.
Yeah.
We saw how much damage the Dazzling Gleam did. With a Helping Hand boost, that might have been enough to get the knockout on Giratina, but yeah, Mattia maybe expecting another move to come out, went for the Psychic, and it looks like Giratina will have the last loss in this amazing battle here. Coming down to the wire, last turn, and Giratina finishes it off with a Dragon Pulse.
There we go. Juan Borreguero has been able to pick up the win and progresses undefeated.
What an amazing battle by both players in a matchup that, yeah, might go down in the history of Spanish VGC. Wow. I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but definitely, I mean...
That was crazy.
To those of you at home who don't understand the significance this has for me, back in the day...